Hello and welcome to this week's video. My name is Anuska Taylor. Thank you so much for joining me. It's so great to have you here. And if you're new to my channel, welcome. If you're not new to my channel, thank you for coming back and watching more of my videos. If you've yet to subscribe, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button and don't forget to like, comment and share. And you can always ask me any questions. All the links are below if you want to also know more about how you can work with me, whether through private coaching or I've got a couple of online courses. And I've also got a digital voice coach option as well, which is probably the cheapest way you can get personalized feedback. So today's topic is all about elevating your vocal delivery as a speaker. And I want to share with you a very simple way you can access greater expression in your voice. So bear with me and watch the video to the end because I'm going to explain all about this and how it works, why it's so important, and what it does to your voice, and then how to kind of implement it. So what is this? It is talking to young children. Now, I was watching a video a few days ago by a very eminent otolaryngologist called Dr. Bastian. He's got his own YouTube channel, and he was talking about this. And I suddenly realized I've been doing this for years without necessarily realizing. And he was talking about it more from a sort of vocal health perspective. But I'm going to share some of what he talked about in that. But I'm also going to share why it's so powerful for accessing greater expression and energy in your voice. So if you think about it, when we talk to young children, whether you've got young children or not, just being around young children and toddlers, we are far less guarded around how we express ourselves. We are far more likely to make stupid sounds, to sound silly, and it's socially acceptable. It's like you talk to a baby, you're not going to sound serious like you're in a business meeting when you talk to a baby. I would also say you can apply the same rules to talking to animals as well, particularly if you're a crazy animal lover like I am. So we do have less restrictions and fears and conditioning around our voice when we talk to young children and animals. And I have found even the most sort of shut down speakers, people that I've seen or I've worked with who are very, very controlled with their voice, and it's very monotone and it's very low energy, even they will have a shift in their voice and their vocal energy and their vocal expression when you see them around young children or animals, or I get them to kind of practice this. So it's incredibly powerful. So why is it so powerful? Well, it really gets us out of our conditioned patterns around our voice, because what's really going on here is when we talk to young children and animals, but let's stick with children for the purposes of this video. As I say, we're less guarded around our voice. So it gets us out of the conditioned patterns with our voice. We tend to have a way that we speak. We speak at a similar pitch. Maybe there's minimal inflection. Maybe we mumble. Maybe we speak fast. Maybe we don't have a lot of energy. Or maybe the opposite. Maybe we just shout at people and there's a lot of aggression and force in our voice. But it gets us out of that conditioning in a very safe way, because as I say, we are less guarded. And we're less guarded because young children and animals don't have a developed ego. So we don't have that defensiveness around them. We might not consciously realize this, but that's why as children get older, we start to find ourselves more triggered by them. But when they're younger, they're just a joy to be around. They're smiley, they make silly sounds. We love being around young children, apart from when they're hungry or tired. But you get my point. It's a real joy because they're so present. They don't have a developed ego at this point, so they don't have any defensiveness. They are the same with everyone. They don't care what you look like. They don't care what you sound like. They just love being around you. It's the same with animals. That's why we love animals, because there's no judgment, because there's no ego. I'm going to give you 5 ways that practicing speaking to young children can really elevate your vocal delivery. And then I'm going to share how you actually do this, so you don't think I've completely lost the plot. So number 1 is greater expression. So again, we are less self-conscious about being very expressive around young children. So we're going to more likely be comfortable to vary our pitch. We're going to use more inflection in our voice. Hi kids, how are you? You know, we are more likely to be more over the top in our pitch variation. Number two is greater clarity. So when we're talking to younger children, we also tend to enunciate more so they can understand us. And so there's generally just greater diction and greater clarity in our voice. Number three, and this is a big one for people that follow me on this channel, is we are more likely to speak slower. Again, because we recognize that young children may not fully understand everything we're saying, so we slow down, a bit like when we're talking to someone that's English is limited, if we're English speaking, we tend to slow down so that they've got a better chance of understanding us. So you can see already how all of these are going to impact your speaking voice if you start to implement this. Number four is greater dynamics. And by that, I mean sort of varying the volume. So you're more likely to maybe go, hi, you know, and vary that volume versus I've just got to keep my voice down here all the time and I don't want to draw too much attention to myself. When we speak to children, we're comfortable maybe drawing more attention to us because they make it comfortable, again, because they don't really have an ego at that point. And finally, we generally just bring more energy and vibrancy into the voice. You know, I always use the avatar often when I'm working with clients. So channel your inner children's TV presenter, because certainly in my experience of watching children's TV presenters, they tend to be almost like over the top with energy. Welcome, children. Welcome to today's show. So it's all very sort of over the top enthusiasm, but a little bit of that is incredibly powerful. So what I want to say, first of all, is whether you've got young children or not, you can still do this. If you've got young children, what I have suggested to clients in the past is practice this with your bedtime story routine if you have one. So get used to this. Get used to exploring the edges of your voice in what is probably the safest environment you can do this to a young child that is just going to be so excited that you're reading them a story. This is the opportunity to practice this. Now, if you don't have young children, another thing I've suggested to clients in the past is find a storybook, find a poem, a fairy tale, a book that really captivates your imagination, where you can imagine that you're talking to a child or a young child. So either way, you can do this. Now, actually, what Dr. Bastian says is to just literally imagine that you're talking to a young child in your head and just carry on with your normal speaking. So you can do that, of course, but maybe the step before that is either to read to your young children if you've got them, or practice using storybooks first, and then go out into the world and start pretending in your head that you're talking to a young child. Now, he says, and I also agree with this, we have to go to an extreme first, which is why I think that doing this at home in the comfort of your own home is probably safer, emotionally speaking. So you have to go to an extreme. If you want to create any vocal change, you have to go to an extreme. You're not going to create change just by speaking slightly more expressively, like 1% more expressively. You've got to go to the other extreme in order to find the middle ground. So that's the first thing. So when you're practicing, I want you to be really over the top. And again, as I said, children love it. Children love it. Young children love the over the top expression. So go for your life. Go crazy with the pitch inflection. Go crazy with the dynamics. Go crazy with the speaking slower, with more clarity and enunciation and more energy. So it's a really, really safe way of practicing. The goal is not to just then go into a professional setting and speak to your team or your peers or your clients like you're talking to your 5-year-old. But we want to then, once we've got very comfortable going to an extreme with it at home, in the comfort of our own home, then we want to bring a little bit of that to the mix. And as Dr. Bastian says, and I 100% agree, most of what our fears are, no one else is going to even notice. I've heard this from clients all the time. They're so worried about people thinking that they've gone a bit mad and they're sounding too expressive. But the reality is most people won't even notice from that perspective. They might just think you sound a bit more energized, you sound more confident, you sound more engaging, but they're certainly not going to think, what has Anuska been doing? So most of your fears are going to be in your head. And I also say this all the time, if you don't believe me, practice recording. So go to an extreme, record it, and then see if you can find that middle ground. So maybe you're 50%, record it, and then maybe go to 20%. But I guarantee it will not sound half as ridiculous as you think it does. But this is why I say practicing with children is perfect, because even if it does sound ridiculous, they don't care. They love it. So it's a win-win. And I sometimes practice talking to my cat, just sharing a slightly crazy part of myself. So again, she loves it. Well, she doesn't have much choice, but she appears to love it. So we are naturally going to bring more energy and vibrancy to our voice when we talk to young children or our pets. Now, just as a final point, some of the things that Dr. Bastian talked about from a sort of vocal health perspective, if you struggle with vocal fatigue, you have high demands on your voice, you speak for hours every day, your voice is really tired, this is going to really help. A lot of the reason why people struggle with vocal fatigue and they struggle with stamina in the voice is because the voice is low, and I'm talking in the back of my throat, and it's pulled back. So you can often have that sort of vocal fry effect in the voice. Hi, my name's Anuska. Now that's an extreme sort of low back of throat sound, but a lot of people that I work with initially, there is a sort of monotone quality to their voice. So that is not going to help your voice if it fatigues. You know, you need to get the voice kind of up and out. And so this is why this is so brilliant, because it forces your voice, you elevate the pitch, you bring it forward, you bring more energy, and as a consequence, your voice is not going to fatigue. So vocal fatigue is one that he talks about, 100% agree. If you struggle with that, this is going to really help. If you struggle with vocal fry, that again, because we're getting the voice up and out, really, really going to help. And he also talks about, just as I said, stamina, high vocal demands. Again, we've got to remember, what does the voice actually need to function well? And it can't function well if it's low and sitting at the back of your throat. So yes, we don't want to talk up here, but for a lot of people and most people that I work with, the voice is way too low. It's right down here. And then they wonder why they can't project their voice and there's no energy and it's just monotone and etc., etc. So we've got to find some middle ground between sounding sort of too high and sounding too low. And I've done other videos on this. This is what I talk about, the optimal pitch. And then you learn to modulate from that optimal pitch. But also, again, just to remind you, this is not about you sounding like a little girl. This is about you finding where your voice is most aligned and functions at its best. And that is where you are going to get the most richness, the most depth, the most power, and I would argue the illusion of a lower pitch. What people tend to do, from this kind of misunderstanding I see a lot out in the world, is they just lower their pitch because we've been taught that lower pitches equal assertiveness and authority. And yes, that's true, but it's not just about dropping your pitch, because that might just be too low for you. It's about finding where your voice naturally wants to sit, and then you can deepen into the voice from that place. Then you have that depth and that resonance, but it's not so low, it sounds like you're sort of scraping the bottom of a barrel. So I hope that that's really helped. I'd love to know your comments. I'd love to also hear from you if you give this a go and try this. And if you've got young children, try it tonight and go crazy and see what happens. But also notice what happens to your voice in terms of the health and the function. Does it feel better? Because they're both really important. You cannot have a really expressive, vibrant voice if it's not healthy. So everything starts from the health. Everything has to start from that point, which is why all of my work is very much around vocal technique, vocal function, vocal health as the catalyst for accessing greater expression and greater variety, and ultimately helping you to elevate your vocal delivery. So if this has piqued your interest, check out the links below. I have a 8-month deep dive into your voice. You can work with me across 8 months where we go really, really deep into exploring your voice emotionally and physically, where by the end of the 8 months, you're going to feel a whole new level of confidence, empowerment, and freedom. So it's both the emotion and the sort of technique. They're both important. You cannot just focus on technique if you want to create lasting change. So I'll leave that with you, but there's also other options below if that doesn't suit you. So thank you so much, and I will see you next week on my video.